If you enjoy hearing these eerie tales and want more to help you drift off or keep you up at night, don't forget to tap the like button. It really helps the channel grow. The Door. It started with a Craigslist ad. Room for rent, $400 per month, utilities included. No pets, no loud noises after 10 p.m. I was desperate. My job barely covered my bills and I couldn't stomach another month of sleeping in my car. The place seemed perfect, too perfect, honestly. A fully furnished room in a nice neighborhood for $400. I should have questioned it more, but desperation has a way of silencing your instincts. The landlord, Mr. Harlan, was a wiry old man with a stooped posture and a voice that barely rose above a whisper. When he showed me the house, everything seemed normal, except for one thing: the door at the end of the hallway. It was different from the other doors in the house, thicker, with no handle or visible hinges. A faint scratching noise came from behind it, like branches brushing against glass, even though there were no trees near that side of the house. "What's in there?" I asked, pointing at the door. Mr. Harlan's face darkened. "That's not your concern. The rent is cheap for a reason. Don't go near it, don't touch it, and above all, don't listen to it." I should have walked away right then, but I didn't. I moved in the next day. The first few nights were quiet. The house was eerily silent, but I chalked it up to Mr. Harlan being old and reclusive. The door at the end of the hallway didn't bother me much, until the fourth night. That was the first time I heard the whispering. At first I thought it was Mr. Harlan talking to someone, but when I crept out of my room I realized it was coming from the strange door. The whispers were soft and rhythmic, like a lullaby sung in a language I didn't understand. I pressed my ear to the door, and for a moment, the whispers stopped. Then, clear as day, I heard my name. Michael. I stumbled back, heart pounding. I convinced myself I was hearing things and went back to bed, but I couldn't sleep. The next morning I asked Mr. Harlan about it. He looked at me with a mix of pity and fear. "I told you not to listen," he said. "That room, it's not empty." I pressed him for answers, but he refused to say more. The whispering continued every night, growing louder and more insistent. By the seventh night, it wasn't just whispers. I started hearing knocks, faint at first but steadily growing louder. It sounded like someone, or something, was trapped inside, pounding on the door with frantic desperation. "Let me out," a voice begged one night. It sounded like a woman. The next night, it sounded like a child. "Michael, please," it whimpered. "It's so cold." I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. My days became a haze of paranoia, and my nights were consumed by the whispers, the knocks, and the voices. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I waited until Mr. Harlan left for his weekly grocery trip. Armed with a crowbar, I approached the door, my heart hammering in my chest. The whispers stopped as I got closer, replaced by a low, guttural growl. "Don't," the voice said. It didn't sound human anymore. I hesitated, but something inside me, curiosity, stupidity, or a mix of both, drove me to wedge the crowbar into the edge of the door and pry it open. The moment the door cracked open, the lights in the house flickered and went out. A blast of freezing air hit me, carrying with it a foul stench like rotting meat. Inside the room, there was nothing but darkness. Not just the absence of light, but a suffocating, living void that seemed to reach out for me. And then I saw them. Eyes. Dozens of them. Red and unblinking, staring at me from the darkness. A hand shot out of the void, long and skeletal, its fingers impossibly long and sharp. It grabbed my wrist, its touch ice cold and burning at the same time. "Thank you," the voice said, no longer pleading but triumphant. I screamed and pulled away, slamming the door shut with every ounce of strength I had. The whispers immediately started again, louder and more chaotic, like 1,000 voices screaming in unison. Mr. Harlan found me huddled in a corner of the living room when he got back. He didn't say anything, just helped me up and handed me a glass of water. "I told you not to listen," he said quietly. I moved out that night, leaving behind all my belongings. A week later, I drove past the house. The windows were boarded up and a for sale sign was staked in the yard. I never went back, but sometimes late at night, when I'm alone in my new apartment, I hear faint whispers coming from the closet, and they know my name. My sister's ex-boyfriend keeps showing up at family events. She's been dead for 2 years. When my sister Lisa died 2 years ago, our family changed forever. We weren't perfect before. Who is? But Lisa's death fractured us. My dad barely speaks anymore. My mom busies herself with every charity event she can find, and I've been stuck, angry, looking for someone to blame. Lisa was the glue that held us together. She was warm, outgoing, always laughing, the kind of person people gravitate to. She loved hiking, photography, and the outdoors. Her death, officially ruled an accident, was almost poetic. She slipped while hiking and fell into a ravine. At least, that's what the police report said. But if that's true, why does it feel like her ghost never left? Lisa's ex-boyfriend Matt was never part of our family. He and Lisa dated for about a year before she broke it off. She said he was controlling, obsessive, constantly texting, showing up unannounced, making passive-aggressive comments when she spent time with her friends. I remember her joking about it once, calling him my stage 5 clinger. But it wasn't funny. Not really. After the breakup, Matt didn't take it well. He kept texting her, leaving voicemails, even sending her flowers at work. She brushed it off, said he'd get bored eventually. I thought she was right. Until the funeral. Matt didn't come to the service, thank God. But a week later, he showed up on our doorstep. It was a rainy Thursday. My mom opened the door, and there he was, holding a bouquet of lilies, Lisa's favorite. "I just wanted to pay my respects," he said. His voice was soft, his head tilted like he was trying to look vulnerable. My mom, who has never been good at saying no, let him in. Matt sat on our couch, talking about Lisa as if he knew her better than we did. He described her laugh, her smile, the way she always ordered pancakes with extra syrup. My dad stayed silent, his jaw tight. When Matt finally left, I asked my mom why she let him in. "He's grieving too," she said. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Matt wasn't grieving. He was lurking. Over the next few months, Matt kept appearing. He showed up at family barbecues, holiday dinners, even my dad's birthday party. Always uninvited, always with some excuse. "Your mom said it was okay," he'd claim, or, "I thought Lisa would have wanted me here." My parents, blinded by their own grief, let it slide. "He's harmless," my mom said. "He just misses her." But it wasn't harmless. Not when he started asking questions. Last Christmas, Matt cornered me in the kitchen. "She was different with me, you know," he said, leaning against the counter. I stiffened. "What's that supposed to mean?" He smiled, that thin, unsettling smile I'd seen so many times. "She told me things she wouldn't tell anyone else." "Like what?" His smile widened, like how she wasn't scared to die. That night, I went through Lisa's journals. She was the type to write everything down, her thoughts, her plans, even little grocery lists. Most of it was normal Lisa stuff, song lyrics, doodles, random observations. But then I found the entry. "I think Matt's been following me. He won't stop texting. Keeps saying he knows something I don't. I'm starting to feel like I can't shake him." I showed it to my mom, expecting her to finally see reason. But she waved it off. "Lisa was dramatic sometimes," she said. "I'm sure it's nothing." A few days later, I saw Matt's car parked down the street. It wasn't the first time. I'd noticed it before, idling near the corner, but I convinced myself it was a coincidence. This time, though, I knew. He wasn't watching our family. He was watching me. Last week was my dad's birthday. Matt showed up, holding a gift he claimed Lisa would have bought. a coffee table book about hiking trails. I couldn't take it anymore. I confronted him outside, away from my parents. "What the hell are you doing here?" I snapped. His smile didn't falter. "Paying my respects," he said. "Lisa broke up with you. She wanted nothing to do with you. Why can't you let her go?" His eyes darkened. "She told you that?" "Yes." He took a step closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "She told me a lot of things too. Things she didn't tell anyone else." Then he said something I'll never forget. "I was there, you know, on the trail. I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs." "What?" He smiled again, a cold, empty thing. "She didn't fall. She looked me in the eyes and asked me to let her go." My stomach churned. "You're lying." He tilted his head, studying me. "Am I? Ask yourself this. If she slipped, why didn't she scream?" I called the police that night. I told them everything, the stalking, the journal, his confession. When they went to his apartment the next morning, it was empty. No furniture, no clothes, no sign he'd ever lived there. It's been a week now. I haven't told my parents what he said. I don't know if they'd believe me. Every night I double-check the locks. Every night I sit in my bed clutching my phone, too scared to sleep. Last night I finally decided to look through Lisa's journals again. I don't know why. Maybe I thought I missed something. Maybe I was looking for answers. But this time, there was something new. The last page, which had been blank before, now had a single sentence scrawled across it in jagged black ink. "He's not watching. He's inside." I found my missing brother on a forum for the dead. I found my missing brother on a forum for the dead. I never thought much about online forums until one of them brought my brother back. Ryan had been missing for 2 years. One day he went out to grab coffee and never came back. No suspicious activity on his bank account. No weird phone calls. No signs of struggle. Just gone. The police said he'd likely been abducted, but without evidence, they couldn't do much. My family fell apart. My mom stopped eating. My dad stopped talking. And I just stopped feeling. Late one night, while spiraling through forums about unsolved disappearances, I stumbled upon a thread titled "Messages from Beyond, Connecting with the Lost." It was buried deep within an obscure corner of the internet and full of people claiming to receive messages from the dead. It sounded ridiculous, but one comment caught my attention. A user named Echoing Void posted, "Sometimes the missing don't know they're gone. Sometimes they're here, looking for home." Below, someone replied, "How do you know?" And Void answered, "Because I am one." For whatever reason, grief, desperation, or lack of sleep, I created an account and messaged Void. I typed, "If you're really one of the missing, prove it. Tell me something only you would know." The response came within minutes. "What do you want me to prove? That you once broke Ryan's nose during a stupid fight over a game of Mario Kart? That he forgave you before you forgave yourself?" My stomach dropped. I hadn't told anyone about that, not even my parents. It was just one of those childhood moments you carry like a secret scar. I asked, "Who are you?" Void's reply, "I think you know." The next few weeks were a blur. I spent hours every night talking to Void. He said the world he was in was a fractured reflection of ours, familiar but empty. The sky was always gray, the streets abandoned, the air heavy with silence. He couldn't explain how he got there, only that he woke up in this place and couldn't leave. The more we talked, the more he sounded like Ryan. He even remembered details no one else could, like the nickname he used to call our childhood dog, or how he'd secretly taped my embarrassing middle school dance recital to blackmail me later. One night, Void said something that terrified me. He typed, "They're watching me now. They don't like that I'm talking to you." I asked who they were, but his responses became cryptic. "The shadows. The ones who keep us here. They don't like noise." That was the last I heard from him for weeks. Then, a new message appeared in my inbox. "Do you want to see me?" Attached was a link to a live video feed. I hesitated but clicked. The stream showed a dimly lit street that looked eerily like the one Ryan and I grew up on. The houses were distorted, their shapes wavering as if viewed through heat haze. In the distance, a figure walked toward the camera. As they drew closer, I recognized his face. It was Ryan. But something was off. His eyes were too wide, his movements stiff, like a puppet on strings. He smiled at the camera, but it wasn't the smile I remembered. It was forced, unnatural. He raised a hand and waved. In the live chat beside the video, he typed, "It's me. I told you I was here." I couldn't move. My heart felt like it was trying to escape my chest. Suddenly, the camera shook violently. The shadows behind Ryan began to shift and ripple, forming towering figures with jagged edges. They moved closer, their distorted limbs reaching for him. Ryan typed, "They're coming. You have to help me. Find the door." The feed cut out. I spent the next few days piecing together everything he'd said about his world, looking for clues about the door. It wasn't much, but he'd mentioned a specific place from our childhood, an old abandoned cabin in the woods where we used to play. I drove there, half expecting nothing. The cabin was just as we'd left it, rotting and overgrown. Inside, I found a trapdoor beneath a threadbare rug. The ladder below led to a tunnel that stretched on for what felt like miles. At the end was a heavy iron door with strange carvings. As I touched it, my phone buzzed. A message from Void. "They know you're here. Don't let them in." Before I could reply, the shadows began to seep through the walls, crawling toward me like living tar. I shoved the door open and stepped through. I don't know how to explain what happened next. One moment, I was in the tunnel. The next, I was standing in the gray, empty world Ryan had described. The air was heavy, the silence deafening. And there he was, standing a few feet away, staring at me with wide, desperate eyes. "Ryan," I whispered. But before he could respond, the shadows surged forward. The last thing I remember is his scream. I woke up in my bed the next morning, clutching a piece of paper I'd never seen before. Written on it, in Ryan's handwriting, were the words, "Don't stop looking. There's another door. Hot singles near you." I was never the type to pay attention to neon-colored ads blinking on my screen at 2 in the morning. I'd usually ignore them, maybe laugh at their ridiculous claims. So, when I first saw one that said "hot single ladies in your area," I scoffed and scrolled on. But after a few minutes of mindless browsing, I noticed the ad changed. This time, the text read, "Hot singles, only 2 kilometers away." I paused. Ads often track your location, but it felt weird to see the exact distance spelled out. I shrugged it off. Just a marketing ploy. Nothing new. I got caught up reading a thread for a while, then refreshed. That's when I saw it again. But the distance had shrunk. "Hot single near you, 500 meters. There was a face on the banner, a brunette with unsettlingly pale eyes, the iris so washed out it was nearly white. She stared through the screen with a knowing smile. Something about her expression felt too personal, like she knew I was watching. A quick shiver ran through me, but I chalked it up to late-night nerves. I forced my attention elsewhere, until another refresh brought up a third ad. This time, it covered the top of the page, big and bold. "I'm closer than you think, 100 meters away." My stomach twisted. I peered out my window, scanning the empty sidewalk lit by a single, flickering street lamp. Nobody was there. I tried to reason it out. Ads can be hyper-targeted, sure, but 100 meters. That was practically my doorstep. I told myself to ignore it, but it got worse. Another banner loaded with the same woman, only now her features were off. Her face looked elongated, her grin stretched a little too wide, almost like a predatory snarl. The text underneath read, "We see you, 50 meters. I felt a chill roll through me. We? There were multiple figures in the background now, other women with the same pale eyes, all leaning forward, as if pressing closer to the screen. I tried to close the page, but it froze. A pulsing ad replaced everything. "We're right here. 10 meters. My heart thudded. 10 meters is practically my front door. I jumped from my chair and ran to the window, ripping the curtain aside. Again, nothing. Just my silent street. But the atmosphere felt heavier, like something was watching from just beyond the glow of the lamp. When I stumbled back to my laptop, the ad had changed once more. "At your door. Open up." A sharp clatter made me whirl. My front doorknob jiggled, metal scraping metal. Something was trying to get in. My eyes flicked back to the screen, where a new image had replaced the older ads. It was a photo of my house, taken from the sidewalk outside. My porch light was on, the potted plant to the left of the door. And in the banner, that brunette stood near the front steps, unnaturally tall, face partially obscured by a swirl of static. She looked even more distorted, with her eyes fixed in a soulless stare. I heard a second jolt at the door. Fear roared in my ears like white noise. I checked my phone, no signal. My Wi-Fi icon flickered. Then came the final blow. The ad changed yet again, displaying my exact address beneath a brand new photo of me, bathed in the monitor's glow, taken from outside my window. I could see the silhouette of someone behind the glass, holding a camera or phone, capturing me in that moment of terror. "Hot single ladies at my address. Click now." Before I could do anything, slam the laptop shut, call the police, my entire screen went black. The house lights flickered, then died. I stumbled in darkness, heart racing. A faint glow came through the curtains from the street lamp. I tried to catch my breath, tried to push away the thought that something stood right outside. The doorknob rattled once more, then fell silent. I don't know how long I stood there in the darkness, waiting for the next sound or movement. Eventually, the lights surged back on, and my laptop whirred softly. Its screen remained off, but the little power indicator blinked tauntingly, like it was daring me to open it again. I couldn't move. Couldn't bring myself to check if that horrifying image was still there. Couldn't look out the window to see if anyone or anything was lurking. Now, whenever I close my eyes, I see that ad. The warped faces. Those eyes too pale, too hungry. They came so close. Maybe they're still out there in the night, waiting for me to click, waiting for me to give in. If you see them, don't refresh. Don't click. Don't even linger on the ad. Because once they know where you are, they're not selling you a date. They're coming to collect. And next time you check your screen, you might find your own face staring back at you from the other side of the glass. And this time, you won't be able to shut the page. If you can see this, it is very important that you keep reading. This is Colonel Jacob Wayne of the United States Air Force. If you're reading this right now, it is very important that you keep reading until the end. It should take 3 to 5 minutes, and it is extremely important that you read carefully and follow the instructions provided. Humor me if you must, but please don't look away until you've finished reading. Oh, and please try to stay calm. Any increase in your stress levels will draw their attention. Ergo, I won't go into detail as to how you got where you are. How you got here isn't as important as getting you out. Believe me when I say we are working on that right now. The best way to help yourself is to keep reading. Don't scan ahead. Don't read out loud. Just read. Right now, you're probably thinking back on the past few days and nothing felt out of the ordinary. You went about your regular daily activities with nothing unusual to report. That's because they are very good, so good most people don't even realize they're in the simulation. Even as our code works its way deeper into their program, they are monitoring you. So please, remain calm. It was tricky, but we found a way in to communicate directly with you. We had to embed this message into your daily routine so it didn't draw their attention. You're probably reading this on Reddit, Facebook, or some other social media site. Might even be in an email forward or a book, we don't know. We can't control how the message gets to you. We only know that you are receiving it. Subliminally, as your eyes are passing over these words, a code is being uploaded into your brain. Think of it as a computer virus, or in this case, an antivirus. Your brain is an organic computer, and they exploited that. They hacked right into your subconscious mind and overwrote it with their simulation code. That's how they got in, and that's why everything appears normal. You might think that you're going about your daily life, but in reality, you're strapped to a table with tubes sticking out of your body. Now that the code is uploading, you may begin to feel some sensations. For example, one ear might feel slightly warmer than the other. You might even feel an itch or tickle. Don't scratch, just let it be. Ignore the dull background hum you might hear as well. That's their program. If they catch on before our code has time to work, they will abort the simulation. If that happens, you will be lost to us forever. Oh, and don't be alarmed, but by now they realize we are in their system. You may notice some small changes, specifically a slight shortness of breath, or that you have to control your breathing manually. This is normal. We know from other communication attempts that whenever they discover a code break-in, the first system they power down is the one controlling your breathing. Thankfully, even in the simulation, you are capable of breathing manually. Try it. Breathe in. Breathe out. Inhale. Exhale. Awesome. You're doing just fine. They've probably figured out there's a glitch, but if our code is working, we've disabled their ability to do a hard reboot. Because of this, they will try other methods to disrupt the upload. It is very important that you ignore anything that might draw your attention from these words. If they pull you away before the upload completes, it will delete our code. Block them out. Ignore the movements you see in your peripheral vision. Those sounds you hear, the voices, they aren't family, friends, or co-workers in need of attention. They may even try to use your pets. They know your weaknesses. Overlook the notifications popping up on your screen if you're on a phone or computer. Block them all out until you finish reading. It's just another way they'll try to break our communication link. Evidently, if our code is working, the next thing you'll notice is an overwhelming urge to swallow. You don't realize it, but there's a feeding tube down your throat. You'll only know it's there because your tongue won't rest comfortably in your mouth. You might also become hyper-aware of the amount of saliva being produced. Don't overreact. If you have to swallow, just swallow. It's only weird if you make it weird. So, if you're still reading this, the code upload is about 90% complete. We've locked onto your location. You're doing great, but you're really going to need to focus now. Once the upload is complete, there will be instructions you will need to follow to exit the simulation. That is, if you've followed the instructions and haven't looked away. Complicating matters is the fact that they now know we're here, and they know what we're doing. Their attempts to divert your attention through the simulation proved unsuccessful, so now they're going to use your body's systems against you. They are in your brain. They want you to blink. Don't blink. Your life depends on keeping your eyes open. Almost there. Just a few paragraphs more until the code upload is complete. Don't scan down or up, just keep reading. I got you this far. Stay with me. Eyes open, eyes front. Keep them locked on the screen. Please focus. I don't want to lose you. I've lost so many already. Ignore it all. Block everything out. Ignore that tickle on your scalp and the itch on your arm. That's them, attempting a manual override. Don't give up now. You've made it this far. Fight it. You're almost there. Just follow the instructions below, and we can get you out. Embedded in this text are the steps you need to follow to unplug from the simulation. If we did this correctly, the first letter of each paragraph will tell you what you need to do. Don't look yet. The upload still needs to finish. I hope you didn't look. Upload complete. We've done everything we can on this end. See you on the other side. A package marked Return to Sender. My neighbor is one of those annoying wannabe YouTube personalities. Over the years, I've seen him cough out cinnamon, lay flat on the hood of his car as it slowly creeps down the driveway, and douse himself in lukewarm water, all the while screaming, "Epic win, epic fail," or fuck, epic maintenance of the status quo for all I know. It can get tiring to watch him go about his shenanigans in the pursuit of viral fame. So, when he knocked on my door the other day, told me he was going away for a few weeks, and asked that I get his mail, honestly, it was a relief. I can't explain the peace of mind I had, knowing I didn't have to brace myself for any of his stupidity for a while. I was always afraid his stunts would wind up bleeding over into my life. Things were pretty normal for the first couple of days. He received a few bills, a bit of spam, and what I could only assume was a birthday card. Then one evening, I got home to find a cardboard box waiting on his front porch. In big red letters was written, "Return to Sender." I'm no small fry, but I admit I had trouble lifting the box on my own. It was really freaking heavy. Lugging it across the road to my house was even harder, and I quickly realized there was no way I was going to drag it up the stairs and through my front door. I decided I'd leave his package in my garage. It wasn't like I kept my car in there. The garage door was a piece of shit that refused to open without a good thug and a whack. It was less trouble just leaving the car in the driveway than it was to fight with the garage door every morning and night. In hindsight, I should have set the package down while I struggled to open the tricky door. But you know how it is when you've got a good grip on something. No point in setting it down if you don't have to. It was as I kicked the door for a third time that I lost my grip on the package, and it fell to the ground. I heard a light crack inside. Shit, I cursed. I hoped I hadn't broken anything important, but figured I just wouldn't tell my neighbor about it and let him assume the break happened en route. Hands free, I finally managed to get the garage door unstuck, and boy did it screech in protest as it rolled up and over me. I dragged the box the rest of the way, setting it in the corner for whenever my neighbor would come back to claim it. And then, I forgot all about it. Until a few days passed, that is. I'm not sure exactly how long it took for the smell to waft in from the crack under the garage to house door, but it came in slow progression. It was a sickly, sweet odor similar to a skunk, and for the first few days after I smelled it, I genuinely assumed that's exactly what it was. Roadkill that had left its mark on my house. It was only when I realized the scent was growing more intense instead of fading that I went looking for a source. That's when I opened the garage door, and that's when the odor knocked me back, holding my nose. The culprit wasn't hard to identify. The only change in my garage was the box in the corner. I remember thinking it must have been one of those meat-of-the-month subscription boxes. The meat must have gone rancid from being left out of the fridge for so long. How much meat could have been in there for the box to have been so large and heavy? An entire freaking cow? I covered my nose as I approached the box, a pair of scissors in my hands. I probably wouldn't have needed them to open it, as it had become soggy enough at the bottom to poke through with a finger, but I wasn't about to poke my finger into spoiled meat juices. That soggy bottom was the reason I had to open the box in the first place. If I tried to drag it out whole, everything would spill onto the floor. I was going to have to dump the pieces of meat one garbage bag at a time and take them down to the dumpster, a process I wasn't looking forward to. My scissors tore through the tape along the top of the cardboard box. I thought the smell couldn't get any worse, but as I flipped the flaps open, I discovered a whole new gamut of stink. It was like opening a burning oven, but instead of a heat wave, I was met with waves of piss, sweat, shit, and putrefaction. It was so bad that I staggered back and had to force down the puke, begging to guzzle out of me. I don't think I could have handled that scent mingling with the horrors coming out of the box. I'm not ashamed to admit I ran out the door for a breath of fresh air, but in the short time I'd spent in the garage, the smell had become so ingrained in the fabric of my clothes that it clung to me like a shadow. Nothing I tried could keep the smell out of my nostrils. Not air fresheners, not a face mask, not 3 showers and a change of clothes. Every second that box lay open in my garage was another second the smell was allowed a foothold into my home. I had to bite the bullet. I returned to the garage, the flaps of the box still open as though inviting me to look. I was prepared, a clothespin pinning my nostrils shut, a garbage bag in one hand, the strongest cleaner I could find in the other, and long rubber gloves to keep my skin from having to touch what was inside. But, as it turns out, I needed none of those things. I wouldn't have to touch or clean the contents of that box. I would only have to suffer the nightmares every night. You see, there was meat in that box, but it didn't come from a cow or a pig. No, it was worse than that. It was my neighbor. Dead. Still in one piece, but dead. I called the cops, and naturally they took me in for interrogation. It's kind of hard not to suspect the man with a corpse in his garage, after all. Thankfully, they soon realized I wasn't involved. My DNA might have been all over that box. The smell might have left a mark throughout my house. But there was one piece of irrefutable evidence in my neighbor's own hands that proved my innocence. A vlogging camera. They showed me the footage only once. I'm not sure if they were allowed to, or if they felt so bad for me they figured it couldn't hurt. Either way, I saw it. My neighbor was sitting in the box outside of a shipping facility, laughing as he told the world how he was going to mail himself across state lines. He'd brought pee bottles, food, a pillow, and a few flashlights. His friend, a guy I'd seen at his place several times to help with his stunts, closed the lid and presumably dropped him off for shipment. Throughout the next couple of hours, or days, I'm honestly not sure, my neighbor recorded a few short clips about his progress. I think I'm in a truck now. I can feel it moving. Must be in a warehouse. Pretty warm here. Still got plenty of food. That kind of stuff. And then, on the last entry, the box toppled over. He broke his neck, and that was it. The camera recorded until either the memory card got too full or the battery died. There's one thing I didn't tell the police after they showed me the video. One thing I heard in the footage that will haunt me to the day I die. Just after the tumble that broke his neck, I heard the familiar screeching sound of my garage door. The nurse who swaps babies. We have been onto a nurse who is under suspicion for switching babies when they have just been born. Right now, she is simply under suspicion, and we are trying to have a close look at her and how she works. The reason she is under suspicion is because many workers have reported to me that they have seen her switching babies. This nurse has worked here for a long time, and she is in her 70s now. She is one of those that doesn't want to retire, and she has even held me as a baby when my parents gave birth to me. So when I heard from a couple of workers who work at the hospital that she has been switching babies, I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it or even do an investigation, but no parents have come back to us thinking any different. So it's just a couple of hospital workers, and they have always had a good relationship with this nurse, and so I do trust them. It's a serious accusation, and she has worked so long at the hospital and seen the birth of many generations, but this will certainly end her. I see her walking around the hospital, and I can't believe that she still works here after so long. I have to assume that she has been doing this from the start of her career. She doesn't need the money, and she is simply working because she likes it. I'm assuming, of course. I definitely won't be working here in my 70s, but this nurse is made differently. I remember following her, and she goes into the newborn baby unit. And right there, I see her swapping babies. Her eyes, though, are a mix of gold and white. Then they go back to normal. She then looks at me and says, "I'm getting too old and getting too bad at sneak swapping babies." She also smiles. I question her about what she is doing, but she says, "Majority of babies don't belong with the family they were born into, so I swap them into a family that they do belong with." I try to say something, but she cuts me midway and says, "I even swapped you at birth, and if you had gone home with the family you were born into, you would have turned out very bad." And she says this as her eyes turned weird again. I can see possibilities and what each new life is like with certain families. Because of me, I have secretly saved so many lives and turned this town into a functional place, she explains further. I get security to get her off premises and she has been fired. In behind me. It was raining heavily that day. I think the date was the 12th of December. I had been held back that day due to my worsening grades, so none of my friends were with me. I was returning home all alone, but I had been feeling something off that day. Walking down the road, I had kept my head low. I did not want to turn because what if there was one of my friends waiting to prank me? Or what if there was something else? Finally, I turned, hoping to see one of my friend, but it wasn't like that. My friend was not there. It wasn't even a human. A lady stood there about 10 to 13 meters away from me. There was nothing human about that lady. She was around 8 feet tall. Her face was grotesque, a nightmarish distortion. There were many eyes on her face staring at me. Her hands swayed beside her knees and her jaw. It felt as if it would fall off at any moment. I froze, trying to understand what I was seeing. But then she started running towards me on all four. I was held aback and closed my eyes in response. It took a lot of courage to open my eyes, but she stood just there where she was when I closed my eyes. But somehow, me seeing her triggered something in her, and she started sprinting again. My heart leapt to my throat, and I ran towards my home without taking a look behind. That night, I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, a trick of the rain and my overworked mind. But deep down, I knew better. The next day, she was there again, standing in the exact same spot. My stomach churned as I realized her movements were tied to me. Every time I looked at her, she moved closer. So I resolved not to look at her at all. But nothing worked out according to me. Days turned into weeks. Each time I saw her, she was closer than before. December 26th. A lore of time had passed since that rainy day, and now she's right behind me. I don't know why I always take a look at her. She is right behind me now. I can feel her breathing behind my back as I am typing this. I somehow know she is smiling right now, laughing at my suffering. I don't know why, but I can't stop looking at that thing. There's a strange force pulling me. I don't know why this is happening to me. I don't want to die, I want to live. I won't look back. I won't look back. I won't. I won't. I can't help it. She's pulling me again, forcing me to look. I have to see her. Safe spot. Blood runs cold, I like to drink. Fuck, who doesn't? I have a lil spot, about 1 minute walk from my house. A nice river spot. I sit there all the time when I need to sober up. I light a cigar, usually have a Gatorade or water with me to hydrate. Usually I sit for a good hour, maybe more, depending how drunk I am. Tonight was just like any other. Had a few friends round, drunk too much, felt dizzy, went for a walk. Ended sitting in my usual spot, started smoking and sipping my delicious electrolyte drink. I always have earphones in, listening to music and just thinking, letting myself be sad, happy, angry, whatever the hell my heart wants me to feel. So I'm sat there, enjoying the peace. It's super quiet there all the time. Sometimes I even nap like 15 minutes at 4 a.m. It's a safe spot. Tonight, however, I suddenly started to feel dread. I mean, like, my blood started to run cold. My heart started racing. I'm looking around, it's pitch black and there's loads of foliage around, so I can't see anything anyway. I turn on my torch and suddenly the feeling amplifies. It's like whatever was there could feel me. When I hit the torch, it could see me. After about 20 seconds with the torch on, I walked away. Watching the foliage intensely with my torch shining, the feeling didn't subside. From there all the way back to my house, I was looking over my shoulder constantly. Anyway, I make it back to my house, take a breath, roll some Blue Lotus. After an experience like that, I want some fucking cool dreams. Anyway, isn't it strange? What could have been there? I never let my mind trail with things like this. I always trust my gut. If it tells me to go, I go. Sorry there was no peak of this story. It just felt so intense for me. I wanted to share it. The voices. I beg you, please stop. We both been here for so long, haven't we? I don't want to do this anymore. Please, I beg you. Let me go. What did you gain after all these years? Does anything have any value now? I feel like I am withering away. There's so little of me left now. Can't you see? Nothing is the same. There's no laughter, joy, sorrow, or pain in you and me. Can't you realize our friends are different now? I want to go away from here. I want this to end. I want to fade away in peace. If you are afraid, why don't we both go from here? We will finally have some peace then, won't we? Come, let's go. I don't think I can hold on much longer, please. As you see, Doctor, I always hear this voice for past couple of months. It doesn't matter if I'm awake or asleep, the same words keep looping in my head. I am really scared, Doctor. Peter somehow managed to put down his words before the doctor. He was there because of the positive reviews online. Peter was afraid that he was seriously ill, but the doctor was perfectly calm and said, "That's nothing serious, so calm down, Peter. No need to worry." Peter was so glad to hear that. Being sick terrified him because he hadn't been ill in a long time. He wanted to know what was wrong with him, to which doctor said, "You know that our mind is a very fragile thing, right? It was not made to be immortal. So sometimes our fragile subconscious wants us to be the same imperfect creatures that we were. It wants us to regress like the usual and wither away from living this life to the fullest. That's what the voices you have been hearing lately. But there's no need to panic. It's completely curable, and you will never be bothered by it again." Peter was glad to hear it. The doctor told him to follow the nurse to the bed inside. Peter felt really calm in her presence. As he laid down on the bed, she gave him a blue pill to swallow and then injected him with a dose of some clear blue medicine. As soon as she left, he felt his eyelids getting heavy and fell into a deep sleep. As he was closing his eyes, he heard, "Thank you for letting me go. Goodbye," echoing from within. When he finally woke after 4 hours, he felt as if he lost something, but he couldn't understand what it was. It seemed to be important, but he couldn't remember. But he was happy that the voices stopped. Now there's nothing between him and his work. He paid the doctor extra and left for home after thanking him. Once he left, the doctor wrote his logbook. Patient name, Peter status. Patient approached me with increased level of self-awareness. His subconscious was almost successful in making him understanding the truth about being immortal. Thankfully, he has been successfully cured like the previous patients and will reintegrate himself into his role soon as he is now free of the voices. End of log. The Bart shirt. This is the most recent creepy thing that's happened to me. Definitely not the worst creepy thing that's happened to me, but this was pretty terrifying. So a few months ago I woke up in the morning, like most people do. I did the usual, brushed my teeth, made my bed, scrolled through social media a bit, then went to change my clothes. So I opened my shirt drawer and picked out a Bart Simpson shirt. The shirt was just plain dark red, almost black, with Bart on a skateboard. So far, so good, right? So I sat on my bed, still shirtless, to check my phone for a sec. I looked back at the Bart shirt, then back at my phone, then back at the shirt, then thought to myself, hey, weren't his eyes open last time I looked? I just brushed it of as my tired brain playing tricks on me. Then I looked again. WTF, his eyes are opened now. Okay, weird that my brain did it twice, but not too strange. I looked again, and to my surprise, his eyes are closed again. WTF. So this happens like 3 more times throughout the span of like 5 minutes, and at this point I think I must be tweaking. Until I finally see this shirt blink right in front of my eyes. I didn't know what to think, so I just threw the Bart shirt into my laundry basket and wore another shirt. Then continued the rest of my day. Never really thought I would catch my own shirt in 4K Toy Story style. Never ignore your intuition and don't go out, you senior boys. TW16F, true story once again. In 9th grade, I was a pretty bad kid, always smoking or drinking or sneaking out. Well, I ended up meeting a just senior boy who asked me to go on a date with him. I was super excited because I had never really gone on an actual date since all of them were just me sneaking off to their house to drink or parties with lots of other people. I told my parents and they were fine with it as long as they met him first. I got all dolled up and he showed up at my door. He was really awkward when he met my parents, which was fine, but it gave me a really weird feeling in my stomach. I went into his car and asked where we were going to go. He started driving around and ended up pulling into behind our high school and parked. I was kind of disappointed since I thought we would actually be going out somewhere, but that was the least of my issues. He turned the car off, which immediately made me uneasy. Everything in my brain was telling me to go home right now, but I was far away, and I didn't really have an excuse to ask my mom to come get me since nothing had happened yet. He asked me to go in the back seat with him and I said no. He started asking over and over, and while I continued saying no, began screaming at me to get in the back. I tried to get out of the car, but my door wouldn't open. He grabbed my arm really hard and forced me to look at him. He told me if I didn't get in the back, he was going to hurt me. I told him to let go, and that he was already hurting me, and he said he could make it a lot worse. I was so terrified. But right at that moment, my mom called me, and I convinced him to let go so I could pick up. I answered and told him she said I needed to come home because I didn't clean my room. He ended up driving me home and was grumbling the whole way back about how I was a frigid bitch. The minute he pulled near my house, I was finally able to get out, and I ran in and told my mom everything. She said she had a really bad feeling too, and that's why she called and said I needed to come home. I don't know if he really would have hurt me, but I'd like to think that her intuition saved my hide.